conversations as the votes for the Lok Sabha elections are being counted. We are now past the halfway mark in counting for the 542 constituencies. One constituency, a candidate in Surat was declared elected unopposed. These trends have always held in the past elections. To analyze these historical national elections, we have with us the Hindu group's former editor-in-chief, N. Ram, who has seen political, economic, and social transformations in India for more than half a century. Thank you for joining Frontline Conversation, Mr. Ram.
Welcome.
Let's start with the exit polls, which actually set the bar very low for the opposition parties. What went wrong in the exit polls? It has never been this wrong since the time that exit polls started.
And in such a nearly unanimous way. So something deeply, it has to be probed what really went wrong. For example, I have the screenshot of some of the major polls. The India Today Access My India poll. Of course, they gave a range which was ridiculous. In this case, say 361 to 401. I mean, what?
Yeah.
You know, RK, that converting share of the popular vote into seats has no scientific basis in India. In some other systems, they do approximate that, have a conversion tool or conversion ratio. But here, there's no way you can do it in such a diverse and pluralistic and vast playground, if you like, or battleground. So a lot of it are guesses, and they clearly, almost consistently, almost across the board. But I must point out to an exception, Dainik Bhaskar. Their range, of course, was as absurd as the rest. 281 to 350 for the NDA.
Oh.
But at least they erred, if you like, on the lower side. And they can claim, if I say 0 to 100, then everything will fall into that. So if you have a range like that. So they can claim at least that they were closer to the actual result. We don't know yet, but it's being shaped.
Yeah.
And some things are very clear. And as of now, the BJP is struggling to reach the majority mark. They're well short, in fact. And it looks like they may not reach it. Although in the past, people like Prannoy Roy have talked about a last mile bump. The single largest party gets a few bonus seats. How that works, I don't know, but that's been observed empirically over many elections. So whatever that be, I think it looks right now, they're all commentators more or less agree that it's going to be very, very difficult, probably unlikely that the BJP will be able to hit that majority mark of 272.
Yeah.
Without that, that's the big news. It's going to be a coalition government.
Truly.
I think the NDA is likely to form this government, although there is all kinds of speculation on the direction, the decision that Chandrababu Naidu will take.
Yeah.
And we have the news that the Prime Minister, reflecting the emerging reality, called him, and Naidu seems to have assured him, no, I'll support this government. But now, looking at it in cricketing terms, players of the match, this is the panel. You'll have to select from this.
Yeah.
Maybe all of them or one or two. Future Prime Minister, future Chief Minister Akhilesh Yadav. That's the big news, really, because that's, of course, he was confident. The Congress joined forces as a junior partner. Congress earlier tried to be the senior partner or equal partner, and that failed. And this time, I think both the arithmetic and in particular the chemistry between the leaders, the two youngish leaders, Congress leader Rahul Gandhi and SP leader Akhilesh Yadav, they campaigned brilliantly by all accounts. And yet the exit polls gave much the same result as the earlier, 2019 and all that. The second player of the match, undoubtedly, is former Chief Minister Chandrababu Naidu.
Absolutely.
He's won big also in the assembly. It's a landslide. So he's going to form the government. Some people think that had he not been arrested, I don't know. I don't know the situation on the ground. It could have been somewhat different. But in any case, I think the arrest was definitely a strategic blunder.
Yeah.
So close to the election. In a way, it's not happened in the same way for Kejriwal or Soren and so on.
Yeah.
But a senior leader like Chandrababu Naidu, who was arrested close to the time of the election, I think that, apart from being wrong, as they say, it's worse than a crime, a blunder.
Yeah.
So that's clearly on the panel. Could be the player of the match. Third, Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee. Everybody said the BJP was going to exit polls. They were totally wrong on this. She's helped. Now, what has clearly happened there is, earlier, because of the violence unleashed by the TMC and at least some of its leaders, followers in many places, there was virtually a reign of terror in some parts of West Bengal, such a large state. Many of the left, particularly left, but also Congress supporters, gravitated towards the BJP. Okay. There's clear evidence for this. This time they have gained. They've gained a bit. Not hugely, but gained a bit. And that has helped the person they originally opposed. I mean, TMC and Mamata Banerjee in particular. That's clearly happened, but it is an emphatic victory. Her claims to being the player of the match are very strong. And let's not forget the consistent player in this, the most consistent player, Chief Minister M.K. Stalin.
Yeah.
Because he's been able to, they were very confident from the start. They ran a very good campaign. To some, it would have looked low-key, but it was very well organized. Yeah. They got 69,000, the data from the booths about the actual turnout and trained their agents and leaders at various levels. No other party, to my knowledge, has done this. Or if they did it secretly. This was publicized. And they've maintained I don't know the final number, but it's a sweep in Tamil Nadu. Without these four, the election would be quite different, could have turned out quite differently. Without Chandrababu Naidu, for example.
Yeah.
And if you add to that Nitish Kumar, who was notoriously unreliable, he and his party could go anyway. And note that during the campaign, the RLD was notably soft on Uncle Nitish, the young leaders. They said they never attacked him, at least the top leaders. So they have hopes. But he has delivered, or the combination has delivered. And thirdly, also JDS in Karnataka. I don't know to what extent it helped, but surely it has helped in some regions in Karnataka in consolidating the BJP's vote. And we can't forget, and I think the most improved team in the competition, because it's a 7-phase competition or tournament, is the Congress party, the old ruling party, which in the first 7 general election, Lok Sabha elections scored well over 40%, which no other party has reached so far. We'll have to see what the BJP gets this time. So I think that's there. And most effective combination. Nobody totally dominant, but more or less equal players participating. Maharashtra, the India Alliance in Maharashtra. Mr. Sharat Pawar deserves a lot of credit for that. I think the Congress also cooperated, and Maharashtra pulled off a major surprise compared with what the exit polls were predicting. And of course, the most consistent team is the DMK so far in this era. So these are the highlights. The BJP is clearly has emerged is emerging as the single largest party, and they can't be written off in this. But if they don't get a majority and it is a coalition government, the whole game has changed. I think the attempt to form an alternative, an India-led government, bits and pieces and so on, in addition to what they already have, will not go well. I think that because there'll be contradictions. It may collapse sooner than later, or at some point, and there will be a backlash. So, for those who are opposed to the Hindutva ideology, like me, and Hindutva politics, this is a good outcome. if it's going to be a coalition government. Even if, for argument's sake, the BJP just reaches that level or gets over that level, reaches the majority mark or exceeds it by one or whatever, it will still be dependent on its allies. It cannot change the constitution. It has to behave itself more. It will try all kinds of other things, but it will, because it has been an authoritarian government. The Hindutva authoritarian regime. It is not just one man as is often depicted. It's true that I think some CSDS data showed in 2019 that about 1/3 of the BJP's vote comes from the persona of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Don't underestimate that. That, in my view, for a party like the BJP, is a precarious dependence on one leader with no clear successor in sight. And if he gets another term, he'll be 79, my age, at the end of the next term. At the end of the next term. So they've got to think of successors, the BJP. And then they have all these affiliate organizations which are commanded or believed to be commanded by the RSS and so on. So it's going to be a completely new kind of politics will have to be developed. And new responses have to be developed to come to terms with this situation.
Mr. Ram, there are two political parties that you need to specifically talk about. One is AAP. We thought because Mr. Kejriwal, the Chief Minister of Delhi, was arrested and sent to jail, there would be a sympathy wave and they will probably hold Delhi, AAP winning 4 seats and Congress winning 3 seats. Unfortunately, that has not happened. BJP is well on its way to winning all the 7 seats. And AAP has done fairly well in Punjab, though. This is one thing I want to ask you about. What has happened to AAP? Is it a fading force or whatever? The other is the left parties. Looks like Suresh Gopi is winning Thrissur, which will be the first time that the BJP is actually...
Alathur also, I think.
No, they're not. I mean, the Congress is, back in...
in the lead.
Yeah. And of course, Shashi Tharoor was trailing, but now he's about 3,500 votes in the lead right now. But Rajiv Chandrasekhar has given a very, very fantastic fight there. It's still, either way. So left and left in the sense that CPIM and of course AAP. Where do you see the future of both these political parties post this election? Because I think it's very critical that both these political parties are in the spectrum and ask the questions that they did of the other parties in power.
As for the AAP, I think it was a question of overreach and the sort of domineering style that Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal brought to the fore and the troubles that he has got into. I don't think it's personal corruption or anything like that, but if there's any substance to the allegation, I think they've not done very well. And also the kind of politics they practice, preach and practice, sometimes resembling soft Hindutva, that's not going to work. You can't be the B or C team or the BJP and say, oh, I'm a nationalist, etc. Of course, they have many strengths. They have some very good people, and they run a good government. Compared with the rest in Delhi, in the greater, the Delhi, they have the assembly. But I'm somewhat disappointed with. I think there were a lot of nobody expected them to become a major all India party in this period, during this period after they launched themselves from an anti-corruption movement. But they showed some promise. Punjab last time when the assembly election was quite a big win. And so they have contributed. As you say, they've done quite well there, which means something is going right. This chief minister was ridiculed, but he's got his base and he's got his following. And our people, the cadres, are quite sincere in this. But as for the left, it has been a long-term decline. But starting with West Bengal, where you get 3/4 of the seats in the assembly and also sweep the Lok Sabha results, barring once or twice during the era of Jyoti Basu, and even for a bit under Buddhadev Bhattacharya, Chief Minister Bhattacharya. It's been a very noticeable decline. It's been a shocking decline in electoral strength and also politically speaking. But Kerala has been somewhat different. The government alternates. I think last time the CPIM-led Left Front pulled off a surprise by its second win.
Yeah.
Usually it changes after every 5 years. Lok Sabha results, not a surprise. They may not have been the kind of pro-Rahul wave there was in Kerala last time when he came and campaigned. But Congress, the UDF, led by the Congress, is clearly ahead, handsomely ahead in Kerala. We have to see how the assembly election next when it comes fares. And elsewhere, I think they could win one seat in Rajasthan, I'm told.
Yeah, looks like. So
and then Tamil Nadu, of course, as part of the DMK-led alliance. That's a pretty strong combination.
Yeah.
So it is striking that Tamil Nadu is Tamil Nadu going to provide the largest number of Lok Sabha MPs for the CPIM and for the left? I don't know.
Looks like, unless they've been in 3 states, they cannot have their symbol. They cannot, hold on to their symbol because this, I think, is the 3rd election that they are not able to get the numbers at the national level. Looking at 3 other parties, sir, JDS, Devagowda's political party, BJD, Naveen's political party, and YSRCP. Do you see a future for these parties? Of course, BJD is just out of power. YSRCP is just out of power. Do they have the staying power to stay and fight an election and of course, be in the opposition and do what an opposition does, like, say, the DMK did under Karunanidhi?
I don't know enough, but I think he's run a pretty good government, Naveen Patnaik. And I mean, nobody has won like that other than Jyoti Basu, Chief Minister Jyoti Basu, a great leader. But, and they've not, whereas the YSR Congress has been routed in Andhra Pradesh in the assembly election.
Correct. Yeah.
Here it's much closer. And it's very close. And this BJP may have won the assembly election, but with Congress will surely support BJD in Odisha. So I wouldn't rule it out because they have a good structure. There'll be anxiety about who will succeed Mr. Naveen Patnaik. I think they exaggerated the problems about his health. He may be frail, but he's still quite active, and he's known to delegate. He has advisors, and now a party man, Mr. Pan from Tamil Nadu, Pandian, and also Dr. Balakrishnan, who's been a senior advisor to the government on financial matters and so many other things. So they are able to delegate, which I think is a virtue these days. So I wouldn't rule them out, but there are issues about succession and so on. But and I don't know enough about the party structure in Odisha to see whether there are a lot of young leaders and so on. It's certainly not going to be dynastic, as they say. But how the party will hold, it's too speculative to attempt to do that.
And you are somebody who knew Mr. Jagan as Chief Minister of Andhra Pradesh very closely. Now, we have seen Naidu also as Chief Minister, Chandrababu Naidu, again, somebody that you know very well. Naidu, the moment he was out of power, he seemed down and out. There were cases hounding him, both by the central agencies and by Jagan's own government. He was in jail. And it looked as if there was no party on the ground at all for a long while. Now, Jagan, for the first time, is going to be out of power in Andhra Pradesh. He can face the same issues that Naidu faced. I mean, don't you see any other alternative? Of course, there is Pawan Kalyan, but then don't you see any of these national parties? Why is it that the national parties are unable to do anything in Andhra at all?
First, I want to point out that Mr. Jagannath Reddy also faced this kind of legal targeting, many cases, which is why they wanted to tame him at that time. But he began very promisingly, a complete sweep with welfare programs and many new initiatives. Perhaps infrastructural development suffered, but then he has his programs in rural areas. So I wouldn't be harsh on either of them. I think people in Andhra Pradesh, in urban areas, would see Mr. Naidu as the messiah for infrastructural and industrial and IT and ITES development, even perhaps artificial intelligence, because he's famous. He went to see Bill Gates when he arrived.
Yeah.
At that time in Mumbai, if I remember right. He is really a doer and a visionary so far as development is concerned. But it used to be reported that he neglected the countryside, particularly rural distress and poverty. Our own P. Sainath has written a lot on it, and various others also. It's been well covered. Jagan paid attention to that, but perhaps neglected infrastructure. You got to do both.
Yeah.
Which is why I come back to Tamil Nadu, where I think whatever your weaknesses and faults and criticisms, and you have been quite vocal about this, I think this combination works. The so-called Dravidian model, where some kind of an attempt to narrow inequalities, including social inequalities, through reservation policies, provided they are properly administered and conceived and administered. For example, some preference to first-generation learners, which came with Chief Minister Kalaignar Karunanidhi.
Yeah.
So on that kind of combination, if you merely emphasize development, the kind of mantra that Mr. Modi came with, then has been talking up. Also, he talks up the other thing also, Ram temple and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But which didn't seem to work this time. I mean, there's no active backlash against it, it appears. But in fact, I listened to the TV pundits, but it didn't really take off. It didn't have a major role to play in this election, as far as we can see. The Ram temple, they thought, like Pulwama last time, this has flopped compared with this. It doesn't mean that people don't want to go there to Ayodhya and so on. But why Modi, and why all this, these austerities and all these rituals, and why go to Kanyakumari to meditate unless he knew what was coming? I'm not belittling his own personal spiritual quest, whatever it be, but the attempt to politicize this issue.
Yeah.
And I was very disappointed with that Supreme Court judgment also. I think they, and many lawyers have criticized it. But let's not get into that. On the Ayodhya, the verdict. But building on that, you try to politicize this issue in an over-the-top way. Erasing all the lines between the state, politics, and party. Then I think that didn't take off at all, as far as I can tell.
So what actually worked for the BJP? See, we've seen that, whether it is BJD or Jagan, all these people have been thrown out. What has worked for the BJP? It doesn't seem like there was a Modi wave. If there is a wave, obviously, you are blind in your faith and you go and cast the vote for Modi ji. But then that doesn't seem to have happened. The temple doesn't seem to have worked. But then you see the huge saffron swath from Gujarat and going on to Madhya Pradesh. Now it seems to be the next Gujarat, and then Jharkhand, and now Odisha.
Gujarat is slightly less than the old Gujarat. It seems from the numbers. Madhya Pradesh is.
Yeah. So what explains this BJP coming back in these huge numbers? If there is no Modi wave, if the temple didn't work, what explains this?
Because the BJP has emerged as the dominant party in the political system, and it's not a one-man show. You could say that 1/3 of the BJP's votes come from Prime Minister Narendra Modi, but it's not a one-man show. It's the RSS and all its ground troops who are out there. I know, for example, in Tripura, when it came as a shock that the BJP was able to win and hold it, I think very large, tens of thousands of RSS volunteers went there about 2 years earlier, more or less unnoticed, and worked on the ground. RSS, VHP, the whole lot. They are disciplined. Now some of them are losing that because they're fighting among themselves. And these tensions are bound to emerge when you become an all-India party of this kind, an authoritarian party. They're bound to crack. There are going to be cracks. But let's not underestimate the work that has been put in. Although I don't like it, And Frontline is very critical of this,
Yeah.
the whole Hindutva business. But there are limitations on this. For example, if majoritarianism doesn't translate into a majority of the votes in India. No party, since India became independent, has reached the 50% mark in Lok Sabha elections. And the
In vote
closest was Congress. Congress, after the assassination of Indira Gandhi, Rajiv Gandhi led Congress got 49 point something. You can look it up. Very close. And that was very unusual, sympathy wave-led election. But no party has come. But the Congress party in the first seven, if I looked up, 7 Lok Sabha elections, scored well over 40% of the national vote. The era was different. The opposition parties were weaker, all that you can say. But they were still there. The BJP did not, last time was 37 odd percent. Before that was 32 on its own. It's not really on its own because the opposition also tries to transfer its votes. I mean, your allies.
The allies, yeah.
The allies for any party. But this time the exit poll predicted, particularly CSDS, that will be close to 40%. Let's see. But if that holds, they seriously underestimated the India Alliance's share of the popular vote. They said the gap had narrowed, no doubt. The CSDS, which was published in the Hindu, usually the best poll in the business.
Yeah, Lok Niti.
They say Lok Niti done by CSDS.
Yeah.
It's a post-poll survey, maybe includes a bit of an exit poll in the last phase, the last mile, if you like. So it used to be that when I was looking at those polls. If that comes true, and the gap has narrowed, the exit polls failed to catch the gap, get a measure of the gap. Why they did so, they have to explain what went wrong. Particularly for this the poll that India Today telecast and with such glee. Today, I think they said we have egg on our face, but they blamed the.
But Pradeep Gupta claims that he stands by his numbers and all that. Even yesterday, he was trying to.
Yeah, yesterday is not today. Today is the new era. It could be.
No, I'm still trying to get a sense of how the BJP.
But BJP should not be underestimated. It's got a strong organization. It's not just the BJP. The RSS is the command center. Whatever be the speculation in the press about the relations, I think the RSS's command over the Hindutva troops is undeniable. Whether it's a moral thing or they don't intervene only on some matters, it remains to be looked at. But it's not an ordinary political party.
What does a strong man bring to this equation, like Modi? What does he bring to the equation?
Well,
does he destroy it?
There's another strong man with a different, two strong men with different styles. One was Atal Bihari Vajpayee, Prime Minister, and the other was Mr. Advani, Lal Krishan Advani. Advani was considered a hardliner. Vajpayee was soft, but very often they agreed on everything. They were dominant leaders of the BJP, and in particular states, in Maharashtra and so on, they have been dominant leaders. Madhya Pradesh, Yogi. These are strong men. Could be regional strongmen or those seeking to be national leaders, but usually it doesn't endure. Indira Gandhi.
Do they influence voters, these strong men?
Yeah, that's what I said. In a CSDS poll found, or survey found that around the time of 2019 election, 1/3 of the BJP's votes came or would come to because of the persona or the personality, the charisma of Narendra Modi, which is quite large for a party that claims to be non-dynastic.
Yeah. And you have written about the Modi phenomena itself in Prospect in an article, The Making of Modi, in April 2024. And I quote, comparisons between strongmen, or to be more precise, authoritarian leaders who rise to dominance in different countries with different histories, socioeconomic conditions, and political cultures are usually superficial.
Then I quote Marx, that famous letter.
Yeah. Men make their own history. Karl Marx wrote famously in the 18th Brumaire of Louis Bonaparte, but they do not make it as they please. They do not make it under self-selected circumstances, but under circumstances existing already, given and transmitted from the past. And thus, it is in the case of the Indian Prime Minister, and thus is the case of the Indian Prime Minister. Is this the current strongman's moment of truth?
Yes, it is, because I've always believed this, and many historians, that's what history is all about. Sometimes you write about the Chola period as though it was just Rajaraja Chola or Rajendra Chola,
Yeah.
or Karikalan and so on. But they were great, they were major figures, but always the circumstances influenced them, and exactly that is the truth. Whether Karl Marx said it or somebody else said it, that is the truth, and it's the most memorable and most succinct formulation of the answer to your question, the relationship between a strong man or strong woman, if you like, or strong person, got to change the vocabulary now, and the circumstances, the other factors, the contingent factors, which are so complex. Napoleon,
Yeah.
great leader, but what happened to the circumstances? What the French Revolution, and then the decline of the values of the French Revolution, and Napoleon's ambitions, and then the circumstances invading Russia. They talked about General Winter and so on.
Yeah.
And then Napoleon's defeats. Also, others contributed. England, Great Britain, the Duke of Wellington brought about his Waterloo. So strong men usually meet their Waterloo.
Okay. Now, enough focus on BJP. Let's come to the Congress. What do you think the Congress actually did right this election that it failed to do in the earlier elections?
First of all, I think it did some introspection. Rahul Gandhi, who led the campaign last time, resigned, accepting moral responsibility. Many criticized him, but he went back, I think in a humble way, back and did his long marches. I mean, I've read stories about it. Nobody could keep up with this man. And why was he doing it? He was ridiculed by was it Prashant Kishore? Or,
yeah, all of them.
The last thing, why are you going to the Northeast and so on? But he chose his battlegrounds, and he went and learned something. He met people, tried to influence them, also learned from them. And that's a very good attitude. It has been shown. I remember Rajashekhar Rao's Padayatra, Yatra in Andhra Pradesh, which catapulted him into power, and so on. And of course, we don't have to go back to Mahatma Gandhi's
Salt March.
Salt March and so on. Brilliant tactics, but it pays off, this kind of work. Whatever your people around you say, shut your ears to that, all that criticism, nonsense, noise, and do what you think is going to work. And that has delivered to a certain extent. Then I think Mr. Kharge has also done a pretty decent job holding. I mean, nobody expected him to be Congress president.
Yeah.
But once he was there, he took it seriously. Others took it seriously, and they maintained their organization. They fielded some good leaders in Telangana, in Karnataka. But more important than that, the Congress got a bit humble. They learned humility. Take the case of Uttar Pradesh, where Congress usually strutted about that we are equal. Everybody knew SP was much stronger than this. The only place where the Congress did not do it is Tamil Nadu historically. And that credit must go to Indira Gandhi. Congress people may say that we surrendered our future and so on. But after 1967, barring one or two attempts, 69, where they tried to go on their own, the Congress learned the lesson that if you have a strong and well-organized regional party, or an all-India party strong only in one region, then you should be able to cooperate with it realistically. You do your best for yourself. But if you're a junior party, I would compare it to a cricket league or football league. First division, second division, third division. DMK and AIDMK in the first division. Sometimes AIDMK was ahead with MG Ramachandran and even Jayalalitha, chief ministers, both.
They've ruled for longer.
Yeah, so they were stronger in terms of popular vote. And support for women, for example.
Yeah.
AIDMK has scored historically. But those two, nobody would dispute they are in the first division. Is there anybody in the second division? I doubt it. The Congress was in the third division, even today. Earlier, it was in between second and third, because they used to say 12% of the popular vote, or 15% sometimes. It's not enough. In Tamil Nadu, you need to score, and if you have to have any real chance, over 35 or 33, 35% of the popular vote. We've seen this history. We've studied this.
Yeah.
So I think they learned that to be humble, and it's worked in Maharashtra, and it's worked brilliantly in Uttar Pradesh. If the numbers hold up, then
Yeah. They are again 294 and 230.
no,
and
Shashi has gone
leads.
into a handsome lead now.
Yeah. That's because of the coastal votes, which is coming into
What are the
play now.
numbers? Wow.
Yeah.
And what are the BJP's numbers? We'll find out soon.
It's again around 240, sir.
Yeah.
Now,
It's not moving up too much.
yeah. So this is about the Congress. The regional parties, they somehow seem to synergize more with the Congress, and it seems to have worked. Like 2019, there was no alliance in UP, for instance, SP and Congress. But this time they come together, and it seems that vote transfer is like seamless. Does this happen with any other party? I mean, is this because the Congress has now decided that it will play a second fiddle in most of the states across India? Is that the reason?
I think vote transfer happens, and it happens. Arithmetic matters. You must have something to offer. For example, JDS, if it has a certain share, that is a precondition. Then it has to be transferred to a very large extent. In some cases, it's difficult, particularly if the candidate is unpopular or there's some internal fighting and so on. It could be sabotaged. But chemistry is very important. And people look at the top two leaders, Rahul Gandhi and Akhilesh. These two, how are they getting on? And they campaign together brilliantly in Uttar Pradesh. Similarly, in Maharashtra, I mean, those have different ideologies. Shiv Sena still campaigns for Hindutva, loves the Ram temple at Ayodhya. Whereas Congress and they could be different. But they've got together because they've realized there's a strategic objective. Whatever be our differences, we may part tomorrow, but we got to get these guys out or put up a good fight against them. And that works. And these are important leaders. I would give the first mark to Sharat Pawar, not the strongest among them, frail in his 80s. But I heard that he went and begged people to support him, even those who are opposed. And his strength is he's able to deal with so-called enemies very well. And he's a resourceful politician. I have a lot of respect for him. It's a Sharat Pawar. And Uddhav Thackeray, there's a lot of sympathy. And the Congress, I don't even know the names of the leaders now. Many of them are defected. But they seem to have pulled their weight. And that's a good example. Tamil Nadu has been no problem. The DMK has been quite generous with parting with seats. They keep more in the assembly, where they'll be more vigilant. But in the distribution of seats, allocation of seats, I watched this closely. I think they've been very far-seeing in this.
So you look at both these combinations, Mr. Ram. One is Hindutva ideology. You call the Modi's creation a creation of Hindutva authoritarianism. Where is the ideology on the other side? We see only an anti-Modi campaign happening most of the time when Modi is being targeted. But what is the ideology of a Sharat Pawar or a Uddhav Thackeray or any of those people?
I think broadly they support the present constitution, the values in the constitution, secularism for one, and free elections. Some of them would have practiced some tricks. There's no doubt about it, corruption, etc. I'm not naming names here, but they value this, that this is a constitution that we must live with, that we must use to develop, and also equality, fraternity, this anti-minority, particularly anti-Muslim. I mean, I deplore the Election Commission's stance on this, because repeatedly the model code of conduct was violated. There's no doubt about it. When you talk about, insinuate about Muslims or directly attack them, and it came right from the top. And when it went to the Election Commission, they either kept quiet or they issued some what is called false equivalence. I remember they served notice on the presidents of both the BJP and the Congress, generally, as though the Prime Minister was not in the picture in this. They did not dare serve any notice to the Prime Minister, as far as I know, in this. And they were and the Chief Election Commissioner was quite arrogant towards Mr. Karge, and in the latest instance to Jairam Ramesh, and so on. Having said that, there were apprehensions, which I did not share at any point, that the election would be stolen. And this has proved, the results have proved that this is not a stolen election.
True.
It was never a level playing field. It's more uneven perhaps now than before, given the Election Commission's, it had a good record after Mr. Session.
Yeah, true.
Mr. Session was the man who really empowered the Election Commission and gave it some independence. Whatever, sometimes he went over the top, never mind. But he deserves a lot of credit. And subsequent election commissioners, the multi-member election commission, which I think has been shown to be the right thing, has done a very good job. I mean, how many eligible voters? 970 million.
Yeah.
The turnout, we'll get the final figures. I don't know what.
62 crores.
62
crores.
Percent.
No, 62 crores. Yeah, it is 624 million thereabouts. Yeah.
Yeah, not very high, but not bad. And the turnout between men and women has caught up, is more or less even. But, and Pranoy Roy and others keep talking about it, there are missing women in the among eligible voters, because they don't enroll or for various reasons, which I think needs to be tackled. The Election Commission has been trying to do it through campaigns, but it's still too many millions of women who have not got their not enrolled as voters. I remember historically, reading, if you look at it historically, that in the first Lok Sabha election, a lot of the women, I have the figures in a book, in something I wrote, many million women were not enrolled. The then election commissioner did a great job, but the serious deficit was they're missing. Why were they missing? Because they would not give their own names. They would only give the names of their husband or father, wife of, daughter of, and they did not have their own. They would. It was in the Hindi-speaking areas, many states there. So looking at, you can't judge history adopting present standards, but if you adopted progressive standards, the election commissioner could have been more accommodating or more flexible. But he had a rule that full name must be given, etc., certain requirements, but since then that has changed. But still, there's a deficit. You can look up the details on this, and perhaps Frontline can do an analysis on this issue of missing women among registered voters. Although in the turnout, it's pretty good, the ratio.
Mr. Ram, you've seen elections from before emergency to now. During emergency, of course, you were also a subversive. But from there to now, is this the greatest stress test of the Indian democracy ever that you have seen? Or was the emergency a bigger stress test? Or was 91 a stress test? Or the coalition government's experiments? Which do you think was the biggest stress test for the Indian democracy?
I think the emergency was no doubt a dark period. I was one of the minions in the resistance. I was not in any newspaper at that point.
You broke into a rice mill.
No, not at that point.
Okay.
I was not. In fact, I was not there at all.
Okay.
I went to help somebody, and they tried to file a case against me, and there's no evidence, and it was nothing came of it. But No, de-hoarding it was called. Yeah.
Yeah.
But there were others who were involved, but I was not. I was in Chennai, not in Tambaram, where it happened. But during the emergency, there was some resistance, political resistance, but the press did not put up any kind of resistance. Today people will say this newspaper or that, no newspaper put up any kind of serious resistance. I was in my 1977, my 30s, and people did not know whether you would ever get back to an election, the elections, democratic election, let alone fair elections, some kind of elections. There was doubt about it because nobody could look ahead through that dark period, through the dark room. So it was a totally different experience, but it was short-lived, 2.5 years. Tamil Nadu was some kind of sanctuary. You could move around and you can put out some underground literature. We all did it. Somebody called David Selborn came to India and wrote a book called An Eye to India. And some of us gave him a lot of material for that book. And there were things like that. Mark Tully was sent out during this period. There was political resistance, and even some of the RSS people, I think, were arrested, and some of them came out giving letters. So others also did it. The left clearly opposed it, by the CPIM. And the socialists opposed Advani, and so on. But after that, I think it's not useful to compare these two.
Okay.
Because that was total censorship on the press. You couldn't even carry a blank space on this.
Okay.
But finally, the censorship. I always tell my journalist friends who say it's terrible and so on, that there are voices, there are spaces, and you must stand up and do it. For example, on the electoral bonds issue, the so-called servile press did some pretty good analysis.
Yeah.
All over in different places, and they brought out. So you can't really suppress the entire institutions. Likewise, the judiciary, which richly deserves the criticism that's been leveled against it, the higher judiciary, Supreme Court, the Supreme Court in particular, but also some high courts, although the high courts on the whole have done better. But is it possible to suppress the judiciary? You come up with the judgment on the electoral bonds or some other unexpected things that happen. So this will happen. So no strong point. You have to come back again and again to this, that India cannot be ruled for too long by authoritarian leaders, because we are too diverse, too pluralistic, too mixed up, too chaotic, if you like, to fall in line with everything. And that's the strength of the Indian people. And also the diverse character. They're trying to suppress these differences. One nation, one election, one whatever, one leader, etc. All this won't wash. And so back to the question of ideology, I think if you believe, if not in federalism, at least quasi-federalism, which is we never had federalism.
Yeah.
But we had, when there's a weak central government or a coalition government, there was political federalism, is what we say, in states, that you could do various things, you'll get support, particularly if you belong to that camp, and so on. But when the central government is strong, whether it is Indira Gandhi or Narendra Modi's government, states suffer in the authority and they use governors. Is this the first time that governors have been misused?
Not at all.
Starting with Tamil Nadu's governor, who should now be packed off to wherever he came from, in my view, because he's not lived up to the dignity of that office.
Yeah.
And there are other governors, you can go to the list. But is this the first time? There are governors who committed fraud, used the knife of dismissal. Article 356 and related sections or provisions to carry out what happened in Andhra Pradesh to N.T. Ramarao. And numerous times. Most of the invocations of that article were fraudulent. So federalism was never really practiced except when the central government was weak, or there was a coalition government which was more democratic and also represented regional parties more fair, more evenly or more substantially. So I think that's where it's going. So is this the most stressful period?
Yeah.
One of the most.
Because we saw former judges write yesterday, write to the Election Commission and, of course, Supreme Court and all of that, saying that they should maintain vigil because we don't know if, the results will reflect the people's mandate at all. I'm not saying that they didn't say the results will be stolen, but something very, very close to that, that fraudulent acts can always happen. So that was the
I think it's
reason.
good to be vigilant, but then if you paint too dark a picture, then it will affect the people who should work, who should prevent that from happening. For example, Mr. Parakala Prabhakar wrote about it. He talked to me about it, and we had a good conversation. I think it's right to be vigilant, but I always felt that it'd be impossible to steal an election here, at least going by current trends. With the EVMs, I have faith in the EVMs. Unless you capture capturing an EVM is like all kinds of booth capturing. And you should have more safeguards. Like maybe a GPS system following it, because when it's transferred to the place where the votes are finally tallied, then I think all that has to be safeguarded. But this campaign against EVMs, I think, is misdirected, because repeatedly the Election Commission has put out this challenge: come and do it in situ in our premises. We won't give you an EVM to take away. Is it possible to hack it? I don't know. I'm not a technical expert, but it looks very unlikely given the current state of the technology and given the precautions taken.
Last two questions from our side, sir. Ambedkar talked about communal majority and the political majority. He used to say that political majority can come. Like DMK can be in power, next ADMK can come to power. It doesn't really matter. But if the population is completely communal, then there is no going back from there. Even if the Congress come to power in the center or the BJP comes to power in the center. Are we at a tipping point in that scale at all? Is the communal majority much bigger than the political majority today in India?
I think he raised an interesting question, and I read that speech very, very carefully. Dr. Ambedkar, I think also he raised some of these concerns in his last address to the Constituent Assembly, which is often quoted. But that's an interesting question. But history has proved that a religious majority. If you ask me, am I Hindu? I was born in a Hindu family, but am I a practicing Hindu? No. I don't want to be identified by that label, because I'm just a citizen of India, and in particular, and also in Tamil Nadu. Anyways, a religious majority, let's take the word communal out of the equation for the moment. A religious majority does not necessarily translate into a political majority or a social majority. The caste system, the accursed caste system, has, in a sense, ensured that a religious majority does not become, the religious majority, namely Hindu majority, does not become the kind of political tyranny that is conceivable if everybody believes, and if the whole population is fanaticized, then it's possible. But fortunately here there are other factors. And one of them is the accursed caste system, because we are still to overcome those inequalities, long way away from that. And that is one. Secondly, there are decent people. You have to have faith in the people of India. They don't want to fight Muslims. Most Hindus I know, maybe small sections, they say about this or that community, there's some historical enmities, or there's some upper caste biases, pretensions, which I detest. That. But so I think that's the answer to the Ambedkar question, if you like, that important question he raised, warning the people of India. But the answer is not a dark one, I think.
Lastly, sir, about the role of the media itself. the media does not distinguish itself in giving both sides equal prominence. Rahul Gandhi, in fact, gave no interviews at all. Modi did 80 interviews, 80 plus interviews, in fact. And there was another irregular way of people to access news, which is basically the YouTube and all the social media channels, which ironically became very prominent because of the BJP 2014 election and 2019 election. So you had a Dhruv Rathi, you had a
Yes.
Ravish Kumar, and all of them becoming really big players in this.
You had an
particular
RK.
election. Okay, that's in Tamil Nadu, so it doesn't matter at all. So, do you think that the traditional media has to have a relook at itself, both television and newspapers? Of course, Hindu did not get an interview with the Prime Minister, but otherwise, do you think that it is time that we have a hard relook at ourselves, where we are going, and what is
I
happening?
think some of them must, and those who shamelessly just projected those exit polls as though and didn't give space to the others. I don't want to name names, but they did it. Some of them believed it's the right one. For example, India Today.
Yeah.
But because last time they had a very good track record with this poll.
Yeah.
With the both the pre-election survey and the exit polls. But this time they got to explain it. But there are others who just follow it. Or CSDS usually does a very good job. Lokniti.
Yeah.
CSDS, and so on. But the media, I think it has to be researched, this, because if you look at only some television channels, I mean, I can't watch these television channels, many of them. So I switch to Tamil very often to do this. But for the election, I think the coverage by India Today, at least today, is very good. And there are others also who are chipping in. People change. I mean, there are no permanent loyalties here, the media. I've seen that over decades. They're singing a different tune. And they have some very good journalists like Rajdeep Sardesai. I've known him for a long time. He may be in a particular place, but you can see how he performs. And I'm not going to dismiss these people as just and certainly Rajdeep is not one. Nobody suspects that, but some others. And we have to research how the Indian language channels and newspapers have covered this. I mentioned Dainik Bhaskar, the poll.
Yeah.
Clearly better than the rest, as it turns out.
Absolutely.
And Dainik Bhaskar did a wonderful job in covering the deaths during the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, for which they were gone after.
Yeah.
They paid a heavy price for that, raids and so on, income tax raids or whatever. So I think there are still voices and spaces in the Indian media thing, and I'm not going to put it down because I have no romantic conception of how we performed earlier, whether it is the British Times or later. On the whole, the press did very well, and the greatest tribute, in my view, is Professor Amartya Sen, a great Nobel laureate economist, praising commending the role of the press in helping to prevent famines. He took up the case of the statesman of Calcutta during the Bengal famine of 1942-43, where they blew the whistle on it. Even though the circulation was small, it made a big impact. And he's done, and I've done some research on that, the role, an independent press and anti-hunger strategies. Others have also. So I think while that was so, look at the overall performance and let us not romanticize the press, but we should celebrate independent voices, particularly progressive and democratic voices. I have a lot of admiration for them. People who write well, literary journalism in many Indian languages. You've got to research it before pronouncing the verdict that this is a Godi media or is sold out. And unless and there are two reasons for doing it. This, I believe, is true, but it's instrumental. It has a consequence because it disempowers and demoralizes young journalists coming in. I have the experience of watching our students at the Asian College of Journalism year after year. Many of them, majority women, about 60%, they come with a spirit of optimism, hope. Who would come to journalism otherwise today?
Yeah.
This is not going to be the most financially rewarding career, but they come and they learn. I think we have a very good. I could do some campaigning for the ACJ here.
Yeah.
With this, I hope on merit. I think we do a very good job on this. Our faculty and the whole program and the Bloomberg ACJ Bloomberg program as well. There are other good educational institutions as well. We give them a certain set of values, rules of the game, training, and so on. And they always worry, and I talk to them openly about it. You learn something here, you already come with quite a lot because they're all graduates, some of them engineers, and very good people, talented. And when you go to the newsroom, what are you going to face? I don't know the answer, but we have to tell them that it could be very different, and so on. So you cannot afford to demotivate and demoralize them right at the start. That's the other reason for being optimistic. I think I did an interview for the Washington Post where I said much the same thing. I'm not pessimistic at all about this. The media organizations have other problems, economic, revenue, the business model issue, and so on. And I just read that the Washington Post has been through a number of changes because it suffered huge losses. Smaller viewership on the digital platforms, smaller circulation, and the CEOs have changed. The editor has resigned. So even with Bezos' support, he owns it. The sole owner of the Washington Post. Those travails you have to meet, but not from crude persecution, repression, and so on. I think our people are far too smart and far too idealistic to fall victim to this.
Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Ram. And we will meet you in another edition of Frontline Conversations. This particular live show ends here. This is Frontline's first live show. We'll have many more for you in store.
And thank you very much for this opportunity and some interesting points you brought up in our conversation.
Pleasure, sir. Thank you. Okay. Yeah. This is our first live